Let's pray. Our Father, Father of your family, how you love your family to get together. How you love for your family. Come, feast, and have fun, memories together. I'd ask you to help me today as I attempt to express what you put in my heart all week and how I've struggled so to try to say it. Help me. Help us hear it, hear the importance of it. And ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. What about you? If you could have Thanksgiving again with a person who's passed away, what would you do differently from that last Thanksgiving until the time that person went on? Would you do anything differently? Of all the folks that we talked to about this specific thought, there was a constant that most folks had one thing. It wasn't like a numbers of things, but there was like one thing. Most everybody that we talked to had one thing that they would do differently, but every single person said they wished they could just have some time back. Just spend time with that person. See, time is the thrust of holidays. Time is the thrust of the feast that we have together. What feasts do, what holidays do, what these times do is make us stop our preoccupied lives. They force us to get together and spend time. And it's amazing that the Bible explicitly says that God has to make us do it. It's sad, but it's true. But they stop us and they force us to spend more time with people. Did you know that even Jesus went to feast? Did you know that? I think that's so interesting to me as I saw, and I want to show you this one verse, and I want you in Deuteronomy 16, but I want to show you this one verse from John chapter 5. John chapter 5 and verse 1 says, sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. Now, there are many references to Jesus going to different feasts, many of them. He never missed one. He went to feast. And this particular one was the time where he healed the guy at the pool of Bethesda. He touched lives at feast. And that's what we're to do. That's what will happen to you. You will be touched by someone at your gatherings, but also you will touch someone while you're there as well. Now, if it's important for Jesus to go to feast and to be with people, how important is it for you and I to go? There's a reason behind it. There's a purpose behind it. So I want you to look in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 16. I want to read verse 16 with you. And from this particular thought thing, I want to draw out a couple of points. But in verse 16 of Deuteronomy chapter 16, it says, 3 times a year, all your men must appear. Now, I want to underline that to make sure that you would get that point. All your men must appear before the Lord your God at the place He will choose, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles. No man should appear before the Lord empty-handed. Now, there's just a few thoughts here that I wanted to bring out. First of all, the Lord expects families and friends to get together at feast times. This is so important to God, so important to Father God, that He wrote it into His law. He says, I want to see you 3 times a year. I want you to come to my house, the temple, and I want you to come 3 times a year, and I want you to bring your kids and people you work with, people that you know. I just want you to bring everybody, and I want you to come to the feast. And I want to spend time with you. I'm going to do this 3 times a year. 3 times a year, I want you to come to my house, and I'm going to give a big blowout. Today, we have 3 feasts. Now, the 3 feasts that were in the Bible were, of course, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which was called Passover, the Feast of weeks, which is called Pentecost, and then there's the Feast of Tabernacles. And these were the three feasts that Israel was expected, the people of God were expected, the family of God were expected to come to. Well, interestingly, we also have three major feasts that you and I get together with our family. There's Easter, there's Thanksgiving, and there's Christmas. Now, two of those have a religious or a spiritual connection, Easter and Christmas. But one of those is different. One of those come from a different perspective and for a different reason. So, I want to talk about those. Two thoughts, especially from the passage that I want to talk about for the next few minutes. Is that okay? Two specific thoughts. The first one is that verse said that men must appear. God says, all your men must appear. Now, it's interesting to me that God makes us appear. He puts it in His law. He says, I want you must appear before me. Now, it's always been interesting as I thought about this is that, you see, us guys, and I think this was specifically written to the men, because us guys, we would be busy feeding our camels or laying on the couch watching a football game, but we would find something else to do than go to a feast. You see, my wife told me, you must appear. And if it wasn't that, I wouldn't go. Some of us would never get together with our family, with our friends, unless somebody forced us to go. See, you must appear, God said. It's that important to me. Now, let me tell you something. I want to go ahead and make sure I say this. Thursday is Thanksgiving. At your Thanksgiving feast, there'll be a bunch of them that we will enjoy. But possibly at your Thanksgiving feast, someone will be there this year that won't be there next year. Possibly there will be someone at your Thanksgiving feast that this will be their last Thanksgiving. And we don't think like that. I didn't think like that either. But this year, a gentleman that's been at 35 Thanksgiving feast with us, since Judy and I were married, is not going to be there. I buried him yesterday. Year before that, my brother-in-law. Year before that, my dad. And I want us to think like that. It's that important. You must appear. And you must approach it with the right reasons and the right heart. So being thankful and having this thought, and I've been wrestling with this strange thought, this different kind of composition to Thanksgiving this year than I've ever tried to bring it before. Because with the thought of Thanksgiving is this thought of grieving. There is the thankfulness that we all have for the family that we have, life, how God's blessed us. I will rejoice with my kids and my grandkids, and I will have a big time with that turkey leg, and I will have a blast. But I'll be thinking too about people that I love so dearly that aren't there, that were there one day. And so in Thanksgiving, there is this strange blend of thankfulness, but yet at the same time, grieving. Now, it was this way at the very first Thanksgiving. At the very root, at the very foundation of Thanksgiving for America, this is there. This thought is there. In 1621, 102 pilgrims, 102 people sailed from Great Britain, from England, and they sailed to the New World, to America. 102. 102 got off that boat, the Mayflower. 1 year later, 50 of them were left. In 1 year's time, 52 of those pilgrims had died. But they still had Thanksgiving. Now, the original Thanksgiving, that first Thanksgiving, the one that we see the pictures of the pilgrims and the Indians, were actually the pilgrims thanking the red man, thanking the Native Americans for helping them survive. They taught them to hunt, to fish. They taught them how to plant corn. They helped build them shelter. And what the first Thanksgiving was about the pilgrims thanking the Native Americans. But also involved in that was the grieving that they were experiencing because 52 grandparents and fathers and mothers and children and grandchildren had died. They were thankful. And Paula was telling me this morning that when the ship sailed the next spring to come back to England, none of the 50 wanted to go back. They were thankful, but they were grieving. And this strange blend is at the core of Thanksgiving. Somebody's chair will be empty at our Thanksgiving this year. Somebody maybe gone from yours next year. Holidays begin to take on more of a picture. This becomes more of the flavor of holidays the older that you get. I am so thankful for my family and for my wife and for my children and for my friends and my sisters-in-laws and brother-in-law, and I'm so thankful for them. But at the same time, I miss my mom and my dad. I'll be grieving. At the same time, I'm thankful. Yesterday, I buried a brother-in-law's father. He won't be there. Strange link. So, if I could do it again, if you could do it again, if there was a Thanksgiving that you knew you would be spending the last Thanksgiving with someone, what would you do differently between that time and the time the person passed away? I'll tell you my stories a little bit. In 1992, I had my last Thanksgiving with my mom. She and Dad came up to our house to spend Thanksgiving with us. And they came, and Mother had fibrosis of her lungs, and her lungs were being filled with these fibers, and she had a little breath. Taking a shower, washing her hair would just completely exhaust her. And she tried to help my wife cook Thanksgiving, and she couldn't do it. So she went and she laid down on the couch. And she cried. I went in there and I knelt down beside Mom, and she and I just talked. Mom hadn't been faithful to the Lord in many years. She had gotten injured in churches. Every Christian is. At one time or the other, you're going to be beat up. And she was laying there. I was able to talk with her for a long time. During the course of the conversation, I was able to pray with her. The next day, I went to the bookstore, and I got her a Bible. And I got Daddy one too. And I had their names written on it, and she began to read that Bible. And she read it every day. Began to take her to the doctor, and they did all the stuff they could do. And she appeared to be doing better. And that was the 92. Well, in 93, we had the blizzard. Remember the blizzard of 93 in March? Well, it was at the end of March, and I was flying. I was to go to Trinidad, and I was going to drive to Miami, and I was going to fly from Miami to Trinidad and do some preaching and some ministering over there for some prophetic conferences and things. And my drive would take me right past Mom and Dad's house down 75. And so it was just a short jump over. Well, I had forgotten something at their house, and I was going to pick it up. And I called Mom and Dad, and I said, I'm going to stop by, and I'm going to pick this article up, and then I'm going on to Miami. Well, Mama knew me and how my rapid rushing lifestyle has always been. So in an attempt to help me, they had come to the interstate at the exit that they thought that I was getting off, which was the normal exit that you would normally get off. But this particular day, I got off one exit prior to that and had gone the back way just to drive through the country and to come in a different way. Well, when I got to their house, of course, they weren't. They were at the exit waiting on me. Well, I thought that would be the case, and so I drove to the exit, and there they were. Well, I don't know how, and I don't know how to explain it. I got to Mom, and she was telling me, she says, I thought you would be coming this way. And I said, well, I just got off and I drove through. And I said, I was going to spend a couple of hours with you and just visit with you a little while. But I said, but we're here now, I'm going to go on. And she says, you won't come back to the house and stay? And I said, no, I'm going to go on then. I didn't know that would be the last time I would ever hear my mama talk. And in some way, I was punishing her for messing my plans up. Because the only thing Mama ever wanted from me was for me just to sit down and spend time with her. Sit and talk. She just loved to talk to me. And I got in my car, I kissed her bye, hugged her neck, hugged Daddy's neck, kissed him bye, and took off, went to Miami. And flew to Trinidad. Well, I was down there for several weeks. A few weeks later, my wife calls and said, we had to put your mother in the hospital, and she's on a ventilator. I couldn't get out of Trinidad. You know, you just don't go to a foreign country and just say, I'm going to go home tomorrow. You know, I had this visa thing and passports and all this stuff, and it took me a couple of days to get out, but I got back, and I got back to the hospital. But they had her on a ventilator. She couldn't talk to me. And a few days later, she died. If I could do it again, I'd go back to her house from that exit, and I would sit there all day. And I'd hear her voice. But I can't. I'm sure that you've got people too, loved ones, that if you could just do it one more time, if you could do it again, you would change something. May not be a big thing, just a little thing. But there's one thing that they needed from you. One thing. And did you give it to them? Mama just needed me to sit and talk. I'm going to fast forward the video and tell you about my dad. It was 1999. Dad had come to live with us. His health was declining, and he was living with me. And his health had gotten to a point where we had to keep a close check on his sugar levels. And he had Parkinson's, which caused his right hand to tremor just a little bit, and never seemed to be debilitating, but he still had it. And his blood level, sugar level, and blood pressure sometimes would fluctuate, and we had to keep a check on him. And the doctors told us that what Daddy needed to do was exercise. That he needed to. He had gotten to where he had to walk with a walker, and he needed to exercise. And we got him this little pedaling bicycle that he would sit at his chair and pedal, and he was supposed to squeeze a ball and button his shirts, and these were the things that the neurologist had told us that Daddy needed to do to keep from it taking over his body. And so I was the good son. I was making him do these things. And as time went on, they got more and more difficult for him to do. I would bring him to work with me, and he would come in here with his walker, and he would make laps around the sanctuary pushing his little walker. And he would count them. He'd tell me. He'd be so proud how many laps he had made. And as time went on, the situation got worse, and we had to get a neurologist that was closer to town, closer to us here. And so we got one in Chattanooga. And so when I found that that wasn't the real problem. What Daddy had was a disease called dementia. What dementia does is it debilitates your mind. It's a mental debilitating disease, and it causes you to forget how to do things like button shirts and walk. But before I found out how, I would make him button his shirts, and because that's what I thought he needed. Now, don't feel bad about that, because I really had a right heart there. Remember, on Sunday mornings was always an ordeal for us to get ready to come to church with Daddy. And he got where he couldn't get his T-shirt over his head. And I would let him wrestle with a T-shirt for hours. Not hours. I'm exaggerating a little bit. One day I walked in there, he had his T-shirt all over his head, and he couldn't get it off. And I got it on him, and then I remember one time he was trying to button his shirt, and he couldn't get it buttoned. He was laying on his back on his bed, and he was trying with all of his might to get his little shirt buttoned. He couldn't do it. And I would become frustrated, and I would frustratedly button his shirt and poke his shirt tail in his pants and buckle his belt. I didn't know. Afterwards, I was different. It was kind of like that. All Daddy would ever ask me to do is, Delbert Ray, be patient with me. I can't help it. Just be patient with me. That's all he needed. Never asked me for anything else, just to be patient with him. And I didn't do well at all. So if I could do it again, I'd button his shirts. I'd hug his neck. I'd tuck his shirt in. I'd make him look so good. See, people don't need a lot from us. Just one little thing. You're going to be spending Thanksgiving Thursday with people. They're not asking for a lot. Just need one thing. Find out what that one thing is and do it for them. Maybe it's your mom, your dad. Maybe it's your children, your grandparents, your grandkids. One thing, because they might not be there next year. Deuteronomy 16:16 says, 3 times a year your men must appear. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we weren't made to go? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we just, from our heart, wanted to go and be with these people and find out what God would have us to do for this person? To realize how God feels about it, that He just wants us to go and bless people. Wouldn't it be good if we could just look at our hearts and get our hearts right? And the second thing that it said in that passage that we read earlier, the second point that I want to bring out is it says to be joyful. And I want to read that one, that verse. It's in Deuteronomy 16 and verse 14. So let's read that one. If you got your Bible there, look at that one. It'll be on the screen for you as well. It says, be joyful at your feast, you, your sons and daughters, men servants, maid servants, and the Levites, and the aliens, and the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns. Isn't it sad that God has to tell us, make us be joyful? You would think it would be a part of our nature. We'd get around people, we should just be joyful, but it's not that way sometimes. It's interesting that this passage gives us a list of people to be joyful with. and it lists them out for us. It says there, with your immediate family, your sons and your daughters, be joyful, and that's not too difficult most of the time. Most of the time, that's not too bad. And then there's the people you work with, your maid servants and your men servants. Bring them to some of your feast, and some of you will. You'll invite the people you work with to your feast, and that's not too difficult either. It's not too bad. It says your Levite, your pastor, your ministries, those people. Sometimes that's a little tough, I understand. But include them into your feast. But then it says this, the aliens. Now, I don't know about your feast. I don't know how your Thanksgivings go, but we have aliens at my Thanksgiving times. Some people in our family are just aliens. They're like foreigners. You wonder, what family did you come from? And what's interesting is aliens bring aliens. This is amazing. And they bring some of the strangest people. Aliens. And it says the fatherless. People that have lost their parents. Have those people at your feast. Widows. See, we'll have all of these people at our feast. Widows. Sister-in-law lost her husband last year. It says, get these people together and be joyful. Now, Sometimes it's difficult, though, to be joyful with these people. Sometimes it's not fun to be around some of these people because some of these people are heathens. Some of these people are going to be drug addicts. Some of these people are going to be alcoholics. Some of these people are just going to be plain mean. And it's not fun to be joyful around some of these people. You want to get away from them, much less be around them and be joyful with them. But you see, in actuality, the believer should be joyful for the opportunity to be there with these people. They will be at ours. And I promise you, I will find an opportunity to talk to them, to hug their neck, to say something nice to them, to be joyful with them, because I want my light to shine. And I think that it's necessary that our family, the lights of our family shine, and that we become an example to these heathens. It's a perfect opportunity to storm the gates of hell, is it not? It's a perfect opportunity to let our light shine. And I think that we should. Our family should become beacons at these feasts and events. And we should be a witness to bring these people into the kingdom of heaven. But there's another reason that it's just not easy to be joyful. It's difficult to be joyful if you've recently lost a loved one. Very difficult. And some of you have done that this year. Not this year, some last year too. And you're going to sit and you're going to remember where they sit and what they like to eat. It's difficult. It's going to be difficult for my brother-in-law this year. He always brought his daddy. 93 years old. For 35 years, he's been at our Thanksgiving feast. He's not going to be there this year. It's going to be difficult for Franklin to be joyful. It's difficult for some of you. But that too should be a time of joy. Now let me explain what I'm talking about. What I mean is it becomes a time of reminiscing. It becomes a time of thinking of the good times, the funny memories. You start laughing at the things that they did, and you'll start crying about things. It becomes a precious time, a joyful time, a time that you wouldn't share for anything or miss for anything, because you get to talk about mama and daddy, and you get to talk about the brother-in-law or the sister-in-law or the kid, but you get to talk, you get to share, you get to express your love and your memories for one another. It becomes a joyful time. It becomes a time to be thankful for all the times that we had with them, thankful for all the memories that they gave to us. Thankful time, a joyful time. I want to close with this last story. Every year, we try to cast the vision of LifeGate, this church. We try to cast it the second Sunday of the year. I want everybody to know, best I can project, what we want to accomplish this year, how we intend to do it, share as much as I know on second Sunday. We cast the vision. Well, this year, for the first time, we were going to have what we call our Grandparents' Day, and it was a calendar day. It was a holiday that was on the calendar, so we were going to have Grandparents' Day. And Galen, back there, she's doing these flips for you, these slideshows, things for you. She thought that was such a good thing, a great thing, that she called her grandmother. And she says, "Grandmama, I want you to come. We're going to have Grandparents' Day at church. And it's going to be on this day in September, and I want you to come." And she said, "Okay, I'll be there." Well, a couple of weeks later, they found a spot on Galen's grandmother's lawn. And a few weeks after that, she died. And this skit that you saw was birthed from that experience. Galen walked in my office and she said, "I don't know what to do for a skit. I don't know what you want to do, how I can express this." And she began sharing with me about her grandmother, and I said, "Well, there it is. Make a skit out of it." And here's my point. Plan like they'll be there forever. Invite them for something that's going to happen months down the road. But realize that they may not be there next Thanksgiving. And find that one thing that they need from you. Whether it's just to sit and talk, or whether it's to be gentle, buttoning a button. But there's one thing that they need from you. Find it and do it for them. Because they may not be here next Thanksgiving, and let me add this thought, or you might not be here next Thanksgiving. I know we don't think like that. We'll never die. Somebody in here will. Not prophesying. It's trying to be real. Somebody you love might. And if you have an opportunity, a feast, and you get to sit down with these people that you cherish and you love, that mean so much to you in your life, find the one thing that they need from you and do it for them. You might not have another opportunity. What is the one thing you would do different? If you could have the one thing that you could do again, what would you do differently? If you do it right, you can say, I would change nothing. I did it well. I would love more time, but I did this part well. So here's the way I want to end to close our time together today. I want to just have a time. We have our candle altar out here in the front. And you're remembering someone that you love, someone that was meaningful in your life, someone that you think about, that you love so much. I just invite you to come and light a candle in memory of those. That's going to be our closing time together. Just come and light a candle in remembrance of them. I think that would be good. And then I'm going to ask you to make a commitment. When you go Thursday, or whenever you have your feast, next time that you are at one, make a commitment to find the one thing that people need from you. The one thing that the person that you love needs from you. Make a commitment to do that. It might be the last time you see them. It might be the last time they get to talk to you. They may come up with some kind of disease that they can't communicate. You just don't know. And people are special. So whatever that is, find out what it is and do it for them. Take a moment and be thankful for life and the people that God's put in it with you. Now, I was thinking about something as I was preparing this morning. See, at LifeGate, we are pilgrims. We are all sailing from an old system and an old way, and we're trying desperately to sail into a new. Are you relating to what I'm trying to say here? I mean, it's just not the same around here as it is most places. It's just different. It's a new world. Let's be thankful for that. That God is sailing us and bringing us into a special place and giving us opportunities with people. Let's make a commitment together. Let's find the one thing that people need from us. And let's do it for them. So, if I could do it again, what would I do different?